let's get started here. So thanks everyone for joining me. I'll be co-presenting with Colin Fitzgerald today from Cigna. I am Natalie Rutgers. I'm the VP of Product at Deepgram. And Deepgram is a voice AI platform used by over 200,000 developers today. We help them bring voice into their products, their interactions with customers, and we offer the models behind those types of interactions. Now, I know it's after lunch, so I want to help us do our stretches. So who here, give me a raise of hands, is using AI in production today? Okay, a couple hands, that's good. And who is using that AI to help them automate their text conversations with customers? Raise of hands, please. Okay, a couple fewer. Anyone using AI to automate their voice conversations with customers? A couple more hands. And whose customers love that voice automation? No hands. Okay, there's a reason for this, so we're going to talk about this a little bit today. So firstly, a little bit about Deepgram. Deepgram is a foundational AI company. We've actually been around for the last 10 years. We're one of those AI companies that started as a research lab, did research for the first 2 years of our existence, and then once we had something usable, started to commercialize that. And when we say that we're a foundational AI company, we say that because we are labeling our own data, building our models from scratch, and hosting those models for companies like these to use at scale. And so when we're going to production, we are always building for enterprise use cases, and more often than not, real-time use cases. And when you think about how to serve those enterprises well, the demands put on us as a company are very different from other companies that might be providing voice AI. And so when you work with us, you're getting access to our enterprise runtime platform. This is the thing that helps us run our models incredibly efficiently. If you heard Praveen, our CMO's talk a little bit earlier, you heard that we are offering voice AI at human-like speeds so that you can actually have those conversations very fluidly in real time. We also allow you to adapt these models to suit your enterprise use cases so that you're actually getting the precision that you need, and you're getting them at costs that can scale for you to use and still have a product and a business for your end customers. So we have a number of voice AI models that we provide. We build speech-to-text models, we build text-to-speech models, we are also working on speech-to-speech models, and each of those can either be general for customers to use, we have use case-specific models, we have end customer-specific models. And then we are making those models available through our developer tools. We have APIs, we have SDKs. All of these things can be deployed and accessed either through Deepgram's cloud or your private cloud or even on your bare metal. And then we're typically working directly with customers, whether that be Jack in the Box, maybe you saw that demo earlier. We're made available inside of Kore, or we're working with tech ISVs directly. And so, again, alluding back to the fact that we are a research company, we are a foundational AI company, we like to start from first principles. And so whenever we're saying, what do our models need to be capable of, we're thinking about how do you truly design excellent conversational experiences? And our bar is not just what's good in the market today, it's actually what can a human do? What am I doing whenever I'm having a conversation with someone that I'm meeting here today? And if you think about it, you can break it down into these few steps. We're multitasking. We're processing multiple streams of information at once. I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, I'm tuning some of it in and out. I'm applying context, and I'm adjusting my tone and my approach based on that context. So if I've already met someone before, maybe I greet them with a hug. If it's the second time, if it's the first time, I'm probably shaking your hand. I'm not that friendly yet. If it's the second time, then maybe you'll get a hug. And I'm also understanding what's being said as long as it's in a language that I speak, and I'm responding quickly so that we're actually having a good conversation. I know when to take turns. If I happen to get interrupted, I will pause. I won't continue what I'm saying, and I'll let the other person take over. And I'm also emoting appropriately during the course of that conversation. And ideally, I am taking action based on what is being said. Now, this is where all of these experiences tend to fall over. This is why voice is so hard. Text, it's basically pretty straightforward. You say something, you get something back. There's not all these dynamics going on. when you're working with text. But when you start working with voice, these are all the things that you have to take into consideration. These are all the things that you have to get right. And so when we work with the customers, trying to build with voice every single day, they're somewhere on this curve. Some of them are transitioning off of their legacy IVR systems that are very basic, can't handle many of the things that I mentioned. Some of them have gotten a little bit better, gotten closer to human likeness. Some of them are even operating in real time and starting to have real-time agents assisting their humans. Or some of them are even thinking about having voice agents automate entire processes, but very few are far along on that curve. And so what we typically are hearing is that everybody knows that perception and cost are the hard parts of building with voice. And even the LLM providers, the ones that are experts at working with text and images and massive amounts of web data, they admit that working with voice is very different. And they turn to experts like Deepgram to help them solve these problems. And again, voice is a hot topic right now. There are many companies out there saying that they do voice, but if you actually start to dig into it, these are the questions that you should be asking anyone that's saying that they operate in this field. Because building for enterprise use cases where accuracy matters, you need to know how to recognize and say drug names, how to capture someone's order number. The response time, the latency, is really, really critical. If you don't have that, your customer's gonna say, just give me the agent, or they'll hang up. You need to be able to scale this system. Most people are doing hundreds of thousands of conversations every single day. Many systems cannot handle that. It needs to be efficient. You need to be able to deploy to meet your security requirements. And it needs to be reliable and debuggable. And so if they are not checking each of these boxes, you have not yet found your solution. So the way that Deepgram partners with Kore, we are a Kore partner, is you can select any of our models inside of Kore's platform. So when you need a really reliable listening system to capture what your customers are saying, you can turn to our Nova 3 speech-to-text. This operates in real time as well as after the fact and gives you the ability to accurately capture what someone's saying, transcribe in multiple languages, and customized to your specific use case. And then you can also use our Aura 2 text-to-speech. I think you heard a couple of these voices earlier today. Now, I have Colin here, who's going to actually talk about how Cigna has used both Kore and Deepgram to automate some of their real enterprise use cases today. So we looked at the adoption curve of how people are thinking about how do you bring in voice AI to automate things and make them much more efficient. Take the use case where you have a customer calling in through their preferred channel, ideally with voice. They oftentimes reach an IVR system that ideally is AI-powered, and it is keeping those conversations contained so you don't have to escalate to a human. But we all know that there are still times where you do need to do that escalation. And so how is a company like Cigna taking those conversations, recognizing the intent, the sentiment, doing a warm transfer to an agent, and then also helping that agent, that human agent, in real time with the information that they need so you can reduce call times and have a successful conversation. So, Colin.
Just the arrow? Yeah. All right. Hi, everybody. So my name's Colin Fitzgerald. I live here in Florida, just out on the Space Coast, and get to watch the rockets go off. I've been in large enterprise contact center platform for about 26 years. I've worked on the service provider side, like T-Tech and Avaya, and I've worked most of my career on the customer side with large insurance companies specifically. So I saw a bunch of hands go up around using AI and prod today. I'm just curious how many also have a foot in the legacy IVR pool as well. Good, yeah. It's validating, right? Sometimes as a big company we feel slow and far behind, but this is a journey And just as we're looking at conversational, everyone's talking about agentic, right? And so we're not even fully into the middle, and there's something new coming along. What interests me a lot, being from a heavy contact center background, also is the transition from self-service to human agents. So, traditionally things like screen pop or self-service, summary are something that we might be able to get, right? Some information about the call that's coming in. But moving forward, bringing knowledge and next best actions and other things to assist the agent in real time, is impacted with the decisions we make on how we migrate to a conversational and agentic platform. So just curious also, how many are delivering real-time insights based on context of a conversation in real time to their agents? Wow. Yeah, just a little bit. It's primitive, but we're there. So that's kind of my area of focus. And as I get more involved with our self-service and conversational AI teams, wondering about the decisions that we make, right? So voice AI needs voice, and that sounds super simple, but when you're coming from a legacy platform that uses certain technology stacks, that are not easily adaptable to modern services, it makes things difficult, right? There might be solutions out there, but you're stepping outside of a reference architecture, which means you could be stepping out of support, and that can be a big risk. So when we're deciding from the carrier down, how do we deliver this voice, right? So do we bring it in through our gateway? Do we hand it over and port all of our numbers to a hosted solution? So on the left is more keeping it in-house, tying into more modern voice services and bot frameworks, but also giving us the ability to record and provide that agent assistance. Or do we send it, on the other side, more of a hosted solution or a product? They can be anything from a black box to something where you have more flexibility, like with Kore, and you can actually decide to use Deepgram or another product. So if you decide to port all of your numbers over, though, then you're working within that ecosystem, which might be perfect for a lot of scenarios. It's certainly probably faster to get value, and a little bit less complex. You're not managing or worrying about all of those things. Whereas the kind of build it yourself is very complicated. It's your own tech stack that you're supporting, but it does perhaps, if you have reason to keep things in-house for innovative purposes or data security, it is an option. There's a middle ground, a hybrid, where you can kind of peer the two solutions, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of with my peers. And so that gives you kind of some autonomy or liberty to send calls where you want them to go, when you want them to go there. For if you're building out new services or new experiences, you can route them there. You can also bring them back and deliver them to your contact center with the data that they need to do their job. So diving into that a little bit, and I try to keep it high level, but I've been in the weeds and technical stuff for a long time, so it's difficult. But if we look at the voice path and how we deliver call to these services, there's the call, and then there's a copy of the call, right? And so I think about the copy of the call as a recording integration. It might be that media is forked at a gateway, and it can happen at other places, all the way down to the agent endpoint, the human agent. But the actual call lands on your voice self-service. It gets delivered to these voice services for ASR, TTS, and maybe is doing service calls or grabbing data along the way about the customer, about some self-service that it might be able to do. And then ultimately, in my experience, in our industry, there's a lot of dropout, to the human agent. Where we've deployed some real-time insights to our advocates, it's more working off of a recording platform. Totally separate transcription engine, totally different tuning process, different rules management, and different data sources, right? So even within our agent community, the human agents, they'll sometimes be landing on the same data source as the self-service or the real-time agent assist, but a lot of times it's a bit scattered. Not necessarily a problem to solve with speech transcripts, voice services, but it is an impact to the way that we're able to deliver these to our user base. And so what I'm thinking a lot about are common services that can be leveraged throughout the path of the call. Of course, it doesn't hurt to consolidate your data and everything there. I just made that look simple. But if there is a voice, I just bundled voice services, right? So if we're doing ASR, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, the voice itself, the logic, the tuning, everything's within this singular model. In theory, it might be different instances. But your voice self-service can start to tap into that, leverage greater accuracy, hopefully get more containment within the self-service experience. But when the calls do drop out to the human agent, have that same model that's been tuned to the same words and industry terms, and made for your, kind of curated for your environment, become the model that's also helping the human agent. So kind of to wrap up my part here, customer perspective. So I use customer in kind of in two ways here. There's the tech customer, a lot of us in the room that are looking at products to buy so we can implement products. And then there's our customers that we deliver those products to, and the customers that are frankly more important, the ones that we serve. From their perspective, they don't really care about all of this, right? They might want to have self-service, they might want to have a human agent, but how we solve these problems, how we deliver these things to them are really not in the forefront of their mind or their concern. But for us as tech consumers, we kind of have these options, as I alluded to before. Product and partner kind of fall into delivering your voice to an external product versus build. So it's kind of a build versus buy. For me personally, I'm not sure there's one solution, right, for every use case. And we're looking for that optionality to be able to build things where we can bring innovation, but be able to leverage partners and external products where we find efficiency with that. But what really strikes me is, what if we could have common services across that? So if you looked at what Natalie showed earlier with the various products that are underpinned with something like Deepgram, the partners that are also leveraging it like Kore, or you can, have an instance of it in-house, could bring, a single model, a single voice, if that's what you prefer, and a kind of a singular focus that allows you to, focus more on delivery than on, these disconnected and disparate technologies. So that's it. That's where my mind is at with all of this. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Colin. And I think you highlighted something that's really interesting is that as we go through this transition of maybe moving off of legacy systems and thinking about how are we going to build out our voice stacks going forward, and we know that there are multiple use cases that we want to be able to deploy inside of our organizations, it is helpful to think about when are we building parts of it in-house, which parts of it can be reused across multiple departments, and how do we set ourselves up best to go and build towards that future rather than piecemealing it. So the next couple of slides here I have are a little bit more specifically about some of Deepgram's solutions and the way that we've built them with this sort of focus in mind. And ideally, we have a couple minutes left for questions. So, and then if we don't get a chance to get that to them, I and some of my other team members are available at the booth in the main hall. So please come and ask us questions later. So jumping into speech to text a little bit here, this is the equivalent of the ears of your voice AI system. In terms of what Deepgram brings for speech to text, we have a couple different model architectures that we've released more recently. Nova 2 is a great model. It is very performant on single language audio data. It operates in pre-recorded contexts as well as real-time contexts. I'm going to jump to the right over here on Nova 3. This is our newest model architecture. Some of the things that we've heard as we've continued to work with enterprises operating in, say, public safety use cases, healthcare use cases, financial use cases, is that sometimes they're working with audio that is so messy. It is nothing like the audio that's getting captured with this microphone right here. There are physical devices outside with a ton of traffic noise. You might have a doctor and a patient speaking in a contained room, but the microphone is an iPad in the middle of that room. And so the people speaking are across the way. And that is very hard for a speech recognition system to do well on. It's hard for humans to listen to and understand what's going on. And so this is the model that we've worked on to optimize for that sort of use case. You can note that I mentioned earlier we have use case specific models. Nova 3 Medical is one of the leading medical models out there right now, optimized for that use case. We also have ones that are tailored for phone calls, meetings, financial contexts, you name it. And then as I mentioned too, you can customize this specifically for your enterprise based on the data that you have on hand. And we offer these services to you so that we are doing that labeling and training so that you just constantly get ever-improving accuracy. So Nova 3 is optimized for those hard and messy contexts that I mentioned, but it also brings a couple other advantages that are really critical. In addition to needing to do well in certain acoustic environments, it's also really important that you actually know the words that are going to come up in your conversations, whether that's as simple as knowing someone's name and the right way to spell it, or recognizing tons of drug names, your product names, company names, terms that suddenly become extremely relevant, like COVID-19. We allow you to do instant self-service customization, and we've also introduced the ability to have real-time multilingual conversations so that you aren't actually having to swap between different speech-to-text models when someone is speaking Spanish versus speaking English. Now you can just seamlessly do that in one. All right, numbers speak for themselves, so let's look at them. So this is a comparison of Deepgram's Nova 3 and Nova 2 models against some of the other solutions out in the market. And I know the text is very hard here. We have Azure, AWS, Assembly AI, Google, OpenAI, Rev, Google. And so what you'll notice here, this is a word error rate chart. Lower is better. And what we do that's very different from how other companies benchmark, is we like to take real data that our customers are using in production and benchmark on how us and other vendors are performing in those contexts. And what that does is give you a very accurate representation of what you will actually see once you put these things live. I touched on the ability to instantly customize. This is one of the use cases that we saw with our customer called Talkatoo. They operate in the veterinary space. And if you know anything about veterinary, it has all those hard words that might come up relative to your pets, as well as the drug names that you've never thought to think about. And out of the box, they were seeing 44% recognition of those types of key terms. That's not really usable. But when they started using our key term prompting feature, they were able to get that up to 90% accuracy. That is a massive jump, which means that they can reliably use this to automate things like requesting certain prescriptions to be filled, recording their patient notes. And so that's a huge amount of automation that they're able to do. And I mentioned the real-time multilingual support. Previously, something like multilingual transcription capabilities was only available in transcription models that could operate on pre-recorded audio. So that meant you have a recorded file, you send it through after the fact. But if you want to handle a use case like call-ins, where you're trying to assist an agent in real time, or even an end customer in real time, then you need to be able to do this sort of code switching as it happens. So Nova 3 has the ability to recognize 10 different languages in a single real-time conversation and handle it fluidly. This means that when you use voice AI agents, they won't just be able to work in the US, even though there's many languages spoken in the US, but globally as well. All right, let's talk about the voice. So we talked about the ears. You have your LLM acting as the brain. Let's talk about the mouth. So on the mouth side, we have Deepgram's Aura 2 model. We've specifically made sure that this can also be brought into real-time context because we want to be having a full conversational loop where I'm listening, thinking, and speaking back in less than 1,000 milliseconds. And that's quite a challenge today with today's systems. So Aura 2 focuses on delivering that real-time latency, but it also gives you the precision that is required for these enterprise contexts. And it also allows you to deploy these things to run at scale with the costs that actually enable you to use them. So we did some benchmarking on naturalness and people's preference using our voices versus other available voices for certain contexts like IVR systems, customer support systems, versus, say, audiobooks and podcasts that many of the other providers start with and optimize for. And you can see from these bars here, Deepgram is leagues and leagues above the others in terms of what do we actually think is most appropriate to be used in this context. And the reason for this is because Deepgram has an advantage as a voice AI provider that has 10 years of contact center conversations, customer service conversations, retail conversations, whereas any other provider that's trying to make voices today, they're just grabbing things off the internet, they're working with audiobooks, they're working with podcasts. And that sort of context of how do you talk in one versus the other is a key difference. And so in order to have systems that can act like the humans in the sort of context that we need them to for enterprise use cases, you need the data. Deepgram has that data. That's where we start. That's our expertise. And so these voices leverage that. So we have over 40 different voices available with Aura 2. We started with English. We're quickly rolling out to Spanish, French, Japanese, many more. With our speech to text, we offer over 36 different languages. We will be working throughout the year to get this up to the same number. And I mentioned some of the pronunciation accuracy. This doesn't hit you until you actually feel it and be like, okay, that's much worse than I thought. So I have a couple examples that I can play for you. But this is something that we really focused on because this is the difference that will make or break your containment rates and allow you to actually go live with these systems. So, and then, okay, we're very affordable. We can talk about that later. Let's give a listen to some of the things that you think would be quite easy to say, but TTS systems tend to go off the rails. So on the left here, we'll listen to Deepgram, and then we have a couple other TTS vendors that you might be considering using, but I caution you against using because they're not optimized for enterprise use cases.